You're listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and welcome to a new episode of the Today in Manufacturing podcast. With me this week are Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells. We each have more than 15 years of experience covering the manufacturing industry. Every week, we take the 5 most popular stories on our websites and discuss the implications they have on the industry going forward. Before we get started, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You can also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IEN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. We're also live every Thursday at 1:30, so subscribe to us on YouTube at IEN Magazine to make sure you get notified and you can join us live. Obviously, we're not doing it this Thursday because it's Thanksgiving tomorrow. Right, Anna?
Yeah, I can't wait. I'm not podcasting tomorrow.
Jeff, big plans for the holiday?
We're doing Thanksgiving on Friday.
Okay.
So yeah, I'll be cooking a 20-plus pound turkey and all the fixings. So it should be good.
That just sounds good. I'm salivating. Really looking forward to it. I also wanted to note that to apologize for the technical difficulties that we experienced with the last episode. And I just want to reach out to Makba in particular, who wanted to ask whether or not I just forgot to start the camera. And that was and those were the technical difficulties. No, Makba. It was more serious than that.
Although, a fair question.
Yeah, do you think actually...
I don't believe it was fair.
No, because do you think we let David touch the cameras?
No, I'm barely allowed to look into these things.
Yeah.
True.
All right, well, before we get started, we have a word from our sponsor. Hi, I'm David Manti, and I want you to register now for a new video podcast on how manufacturers are using augmented reality. Joining me is Mike Bradford, and he's going to talk about how, if anything, augmented reality makes manufacturers seem more tech-savvy. How's that working, Mike?
The image of manufacturing quite often, particularly in younger employees, is just, it's not cool, it's dirty, it's whatever. With the use of HoloLens or other technologies to do augmented reality, all of a sudden this is new technology. It's fun to use, it's exciting, it's interesting, and it gives manufacturers a much more tech-savvy and interesting image, particularly for younger workers.
And we're back. And before we get started, Anna, it's not like you or Jeff can touch the cameras either.
I know.
That's why we have producers.
I never would. Yeah,
They're the ones that break the cameras.
I'm just saying it's unfair to point the finger at you because that is not your area of expertise.
It is not. I bet I know the red button. Beyond that, nothing. All right, and another bit about our sponsor, Dassault Systems. Please join us for a new webinar coming up December 8th at 1 Central. We're going to talk about quality and assembly and attracting new talent using augmented reality for manufacturers. Join us December 8th at 1 p.m. I'll be with Mike Bradford. He is an expert from Dassault. Really fascinating conversation. Click the link below to register. It's also in the live chats, or just reach out. I'll make sure you get the invite. Our first story this week, Automaker aims to capitalize on tech layoffs. Skilled software engineers and tech-savvy talent are in high demand. As former tech darlings Facebook and Twitter face layoffs and a mass exodus, and Amazon cuts 10,000 people, Jaguar Land Rover saw an opportunity. The Automaker set up a new website targeting any recently displaced tech workers who might want to try out a different industry. Jaguar Land Rover needs help developing and building its new fleet of electric vehicles. The company is trying to fill 800 jobs across numerous advanced technology positions, including machine learning, data science, electrified powertrains, and self-driving systems. The only caveat is location. Many of these layoffs happen in California, and a new job at Jaguar would likely be in the UK, though there are some posts in the US as well as Ireland, Hungary, India, and China. Jeff, I think the big question is, do these former Silicon Valley engineers want a job in manufacturing, and would they consider a job in manufacturing?
Maybe not initially, but I think there's an opportunity here. And I really do applaud Jaguar Land Rover for the approach that they're taking. I think this is something that other manufacturers should try to emulate. I think it's a good call, especially when you look at data scientists. That is something that could be a closer to apples type of dynamic in terms of shifting jobs or shifting industries. Because if it's data, regardless if you're looking at a social network or if you're looking at manufacturing data, the way that you acquire it, utilize it, disperse it, share it, whatever you want to say, there are a lot of similarities there. Mm-hmm. Now, going beyond that, it's not going to be exact.
Yeah.
But when you look at the types of individuals and the caliber of individuals that are attracted to these types of companies, and we're looking at a big number. I mean, Washington Post puts it like 120,000 people that have been laid off from these big tech companies. Mm-hmm. That's a lot of opportunity if you're a manufacturer. And I think maybe initially if you worked at Meta or Twitter, going to Rockwell Automation or Caterpillar may not seem like the right fit for you. But if those companies are assertive in going after them and targeting them and saying, hey, look, this is a great fit for you. We are a great company. We're in a lot of ways a lot more stable than where you were working before. Mm-hmm. Yes, I think this is a huge opportunity. And you do bring up a good point, though. Would they be interested in manufacturing? Hard to say right now. But one of the other areas where I think there is a huge opportunity, and I know I'm getting on my soapbox here early, but it's cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. Right now, when you look at the U.S. alone, there are over 700,000 openings for cybersecurity professionals. Okay. Yeah. That's not all manufacturing, but if you look at things and the role manufacturing plays in the economy, you got to figure 10 to 15% of those are with industrial firms or companies that support manufacturers. So there are a ton of opportunities. And in that instance, it is a little bit, again, more apples to apples in terms of what the job would require and the skill set that's needed. So I think there's a huge opportunity for manufacturing in getting the talent that they need and that they've been missing. What they talk about 2.1 million unfilled manufacturing jobs by 2030. Mm-hmm. There's an opportunity there. The other thing is when you look at these individuals and why they're attracted to some of these tech companies, they're also very socially visible, or they take a lot of pride in putting themselves out there and offering their thoughts on social media and in other places. If they do come around to manufacturing and they do enjoy it and they do see the value in it, what a tremendous marketing message they could provide in saying, you know what, I did work at Meta, made the switch over to Jaguar Land Rover, and it's awesome. And I would advise other people to do it. That can help combat some of those image problems and maybe help fill in some of those skills gap problems that we continue to have in manufacturing. So, I mean, I applaud them, and I hope others can kind of follow their role.
Yeah, Jaguar Land Rover said it's focused on enhancing its in-house data capability. And I agree. I think that's where we talk about the struggles manufacturers have with big data and what to do with it. The Automaker says it's crucial to its digital transformation. And I do think there's a big opportunity there. Anna, your thoughts on this new portal Jaguar Land Rover launched to try and attract this talent?
Yeah, I mean, it's exciting. I think that a lot of people were spooked when they saw some of this news come out about the tech layoffs. It would just seem like back to back to back. Mm-hmm. I think we need to go back and kind of look at the contrast between what's happening in tech and what's actually happening in the rest of the job market. I think it's easy to look at this rash of really high profile layoffs as scary and maybe extrapolate a larger trend from that. But I recently saw a study commissioned by Indeed and Glassdoor where they cautioned businesses against doing exactly that, drawing conclusions from what's happening in tech and applying that to their businesses, because they actually believe that the job market is going to continue to be tight in America, and it might stay that way for a long time. And one major issue in play is simply that there's a falling share of workers that are falling in that 25 to 54 age range, sort of the working.
It's a big range.
It's a big range, but it's getting smaller.
Yeah.
So, and they indicate that that's happening actually in a lot of developed countries, but that it could, going forward, sort of reduce those spikes in unemployment that you see when there's recession type economic conditions. So they're saying that even if we were to kind of skate into recession or get close to it, that the impacts to the job market may not come out in the way we saw them in like 2008, 2009, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And, I think that another thing to mention that to me proves that this is maybe tech specific and not everyone specific is just that some of these companies were dealing with some really sort of extraordinary circumstances. Twitter's kind of in slash and burn mode. Microsoft, they've been cutting jobs all year, but they were on this sugar high from the pandemic, selling tons of PCs, and that's kind of fallen back to earth. Meta, we know, ran into some problems with this Apple security change. They lost a ton of revenue from that, billions of dollars in revenue from that. Their VR stuff that's just not taken off. So there's a lot of issues going on with those companies that I think speak to what they're going through and not necessarily elsewhere. So obviously, though unfortunate, as you mentioned, I think this is a good opportunity for other industries to kind of snap up some of those workers that have struggled to really recruit that high-end tech talent. And it sounds like these workers, luckily, will probably have a way out. It's not like they're losing their job when everyone else is. I think it's just tech jobs, right?
Yeah, not just jumping into a growing pool.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So, I agree completely that the manufacturing sector is going to be lucky to get their hands on these workers if they can. And it may just be that sort of inroad that they need to kind of break a stigma or whatever. And as you said, get in, give it a try, and realize that it's, just as innovative and interesting and exciting as working for Twitter.
Well, and Jeff, to your point about kind of a social push from these workers, we talk about the stigma trying to get to people at a high school level, but if you could get a big portion of these workers into manufacturing, they could really change the perspective on the industry faster. I talked about where some of these locations will be, jobs will be. Jaguar will be offering hybrid working patterns, so that might be something that's also attractive to those type of workers. The company is trying to, quote, recruit digital capability into the business. And I guess, this is a good way to go about that. Yeah. All right, our next most popular story. There's a new world's fastest production EV. During a recent test run in Germany, the Rimac Nevera hypercar reached 258 miles per hour. The Nevera can produce 1,914 horsepower and can go from 0 to 60 in only 1.85 seconds. The automaker is manufacturing the Nevera at its facility in Croatia, and it has already delivered some to customers. The customers may be few and far between, though, since the car carries a $2.1 million price tag. And to keep it safe, the model delivered to customers tops out at 218 miles per hour, so dialing it back a little bit. However, Rimac is willing to boost a Nevera to its real top speed during special customer events under controlled conditions if anyone's interested. The vehicle went about 1/3 the speed of sound. Jeff, that sounds necessary.
What an amazing company, and not really in a location you would identify with huge amounts of automotive technology. Just to give a little more perspective, this Nevera here, one of the things that caught my eye, it's not uncommon for these electric vehicles to have motors at all four wheels. What's interesting is you look at 300 horsepower at the two front wheels and over 600 horsepower at each of the rear wheels. That's incredible. To be able to control that amount of horsepower, basically out ripping the car in half, that is incredible automotive engineering. Another thing that caught my eye is they have sensors at each one of these wheels. So it calculates the amount of torque deployed to each wheel over 100 times a second.
Whoa.
That's insane.
Yeah, that's incredible.
That is a ton of data. And where I'm going with this, and again, this company just doing a bunch of cool stuff. When you look at the things that they're doing with their battery range, one of the things that they're really focused on is thermal management, which we know is a huge issue with EVs. Being able to control that heat not only makes them safer, allows the battery to last longer, allows the charge to last longer, all of these things. And what's cool with Rimac is they're working with a dozen different automotive OEMs in Europe. So a lot of the things that they're doing aren't just to build this super cool hypercar. It's also to really boost EVs going forward. A lot of this technology, if you want to spend $2 million on a hypercar, this would be a cool one to do it. But what's most promising to me is this is a firm with 1,000 engineers working on this stuff to develop technology that will get to us. They're doing the things that lead to the things that we need going forward. So really cool company doing a lot of tremendous stuff here. The other thing I wanted to point out is their autonomous driving. What's really cool is the name for it that I liked. It's called Driver Coach. There is no guys in terms of
Your buddy.
autopilot or anything like this. And right now they're doing it. Their AI, they're really developing it for racing first, but they're using all of the same technologies with the cameras and the sensors and all of that to develop autonomous opportunities down the road. Not right now. Again, if you want to spend the money, sure, you can get some of this stuff, but it's really meant for development and use in future iterations.
Well, it was very calculated, everything that Rimac been doing. So the feat not only made Rimac Nevera the fastest electric production car in the world, but the 256 mile per hour top speed was actually a target set by that Rimac team when the car was first unveiled back in 2018.
Wow.
Talking about the man hours, Jeff, that you had mentioned, the team has since 2018, 1.6 million hours into its development. And I was just trying to figure out how many people were on the Santa because that works out to like 200,000 8-hour shifts. So they've put the time in.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like they're going to sell 150 of these, even at $2 million a pop. You might be in the red.
Yeah, they're doing all right.
Car and Driver gave this vehicle a 9 out of 10, which I thought was pretty impressive coming from them because they can be tough on newcomers.
Yeah.
My favorite line from their review was when they were listing the drawbacks on the vehicle. Really, the only thing they said was an NBA baller price tag, not big enough to fit an actual NBA baller.
Nice.
So maybe a little tight interior. Obviously, it's a niche buy at $2 million, but otherwise, Car and Driver loved this vehicle, and they gave it high marks for obviously performance, but also for the build quality. They said the chassis was really stable. To your point about all of that horsepower, it's amazing that you could even ride in that thing, right?
Yeah.
But they also were adding that the development around EVs had really ushered in some new high watermarks when it comes to speed, of course. And in fact, they said that the Rimac, this is a quote from Car and Driver, makes us optimistic about the future of ultra high performance. So obviously, this is a low production vehicle. Their plan, as I said, is to make 150. But it does raise some questions, I think, about some areas that might still need some work when it comes to ultra performance, namely the battery range. It looks like you can get about 200 miles out of this battery, but that might degrade when you're trying to max this thing out, or even get
going 250 miles. Yeah.
or even getting close to that, right? Because maxing it out is not really practical. But even if, say, you're running this thing along the highway at 100 miles an hour, you still have to stop and charge every 2 hours, right? So it will be interesting to see the development on batteries over the next few years, because we know that the larger the battery, the heavier the battery. And so for a car like this, obviously you could quickly undo a lot of that high performance if you were to do that. So what's next there? I mean, I guess millionaires aren't probably taking this on like a cross-country road trip, but I do think it kind of raises some questions around like, how do you get that battery up to 400 range, like you're seeing in a typical passenger vehicle coming out in the next couple of years, and still maintain some of that performance? So I'm sure that there's a lot of ideas and brain power around how to do that. But
I think this is a car that you're okay charging more frequently. So that way you can just have it plugged in and be like, yeah, what's up? Yeah, look at it. It's my Rimac.
Well, I think one of the cool things that they are working with is the placement of the battery. They were talking about that a lot because that can obviously improve the amount of aerodynamics, the amount of power you can get out of it without stressing the battery as much. Just another cool thing that they're working on, but great point, obviously, in terms of going forward. The other thing that I really liked was the name, Nevera, which is the name is given to a quick, sudden, and mighty Mediterranean storm that races across the open sea of Croatia.
oh, wow.
That's what Nevera means.
So it's a Croatian word?
Yeah.
I like
Yeah,
it.
it's poetic.
I don't know. Just like that.
Yeah.
Kind of resonated.
That's fair. It's better than the, Tinto. I would recommend anyone that's listening to the story to go and look at the footage of the record-setting event. It's incredible. Also, I really hope this car is the next Bond car because it's just cool.
Yeah. Very cool looking
Just
car.
very cool.
What is a Tinto?
Tinto? Is that not a car?
Not familiar. I mean, I'm familiar with the Pinto.
It's a new car that I came up with recently.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's
All right.
I'm combining two.
I'm buying
combining two.
the David Tinto
Yeah. My Tinto.
I like that.
hybrid.
Yeah. It's going to be a banger. The next most popular story. Tesla Gigafactory construction workers allege unsafe conditions and wage theft. Tesla opened its Austin, Texas Gigafactory last April. The facility has 10 million square feet of factory floor and is the manufacturing hub for the Model Y. On its website, Tesla says, quote, "Our construction team is reimagining what a factory can be." However, a new report from The Guardian says members of the construction team will file a complaint with the Department of Labor that alleges exploitive work conditions that exposes them to wage theft and injuries. One worker claims a subcontractor provided fake digital OSHA 10 and OSHA 30 certificates despite not providing any training. He also said that his team was told to work on the factory's roof at night without lights. And on another occasion, he was told to continue production on a flooded floor with live wiring and cords in the water. Other workers say they weren't paid for work performed, overtime pay, or the proper overtime rate. Jeff, the worker, told his wife, "I'm going to die in this factory." Tesla hasn't commented on the report, but I'm sure his wife's disappointed.
Yeah, man. Well, I think couple things here, the 10 and 30 certificates, it's the equivalent of watching a video. I mean, it's not super intensive training. Those are hours that you need to spend basically going through manuals and other things like that. So for them to just sort of sidestep that, that seems like the lowest bar to meet in terms of hitting and making sure everybody had qualified there. And I think I don't want to take the onus off of the contractors and the people doing the construction work, but we see so much with Elon Musk-led organizations. He puts so much pressure to get things done now, quicker, faster. Want it done now. This isn't good enough. You could see that emanating in these types of projects as well. What's taken so long with my factory? I need to get this factory going. He's talking to people. They put that same pressure on these contractors. That's what leads to these types of issues, in my opinion, when you're so focused on that timeline as opposed to making sure it's done correctly, especially when you're dealing with building a building and all of the different moving parts that was so important in creating this immense production facility. And to put them in a position where they were almost forced to skip steps, again, they shouldn't. But this has become a theme with a lot of Musk's organizations here. He's created a culture that almost makes it okay to sidestep this stuff. And then when somebody calls him out, he gets pissed off. And that's what happened. I mean, we ran a similar story at SpaceX, where basically some employees were saying, we didn't really agree with what Musk did in a couple situations, and they got fired. And that created another situation with the Department of Labor. So it just, when all of these things continue to come to a head, and there's one common element, which is they're run by Elon Musk, there has to be a pattern here. Again, for these workers, for a worker to say that to his wife, are you kidding me? In the U.S., building one of the most technologically advanced factories in the world? That's ridiculous. And again, you have to feel like this is a culture that starts at the top.
Anna, you talk about the issues with Musk and how it's going to affect Tesla, SpaceX, and how, maybe there should be a little bit more accountability at the top. This just seems to reinforce that point.
It does, I think. I don't think that we should just ignore the fact that this person who's creating this culture, as Jeff very eloquently, discussed, that he's capable of running all these companies at once.
Yeah,
I just don't think that that's a reality. And to your point, I agree. He creates this culture of like fast, go, go, go. And then probably, down the chain leaves that up to be enforced. And people know that he'll have their head if they don't. I feel like when we see this kind of stuff come out in the media, these complaints, people tend to roll their eyes and say stuff like, well, you didn't have to be there. Why didn't you leave? Blah, blah, blah. And to that, I would say, because we see this in our comments all the time, right? It's frustrating to me to see that like when someone dies in a plant and then we look back and we put those companies on blast for how they operated, if they were doing a poor job of enforcing safety protocols and all that stuff, we feel very justified in doing that. But if nobody dies, we should still be doing that. Like we should still be looking at this and pointing a finger at them, because in any of these cases, it was so close to these being fatal scenarios, live wires and pooled water. I mean, what do you, like going on a metal roof in the middle of the night with no lights on? Give me a break. Yeah. I mean, you mentioned the OSHA accreditations, like that was so egregious and unnecessary. But one of the things that The Guardian reported on, they pointed out in their report on this, that not only did it mean that workers did not have access to proper training, but they were also not told in this process that they had the right to refuse dangerous work. And I think that's an important point because, I don't know if that was deliberate on behalf of the management team who was kind of pushing this all through, but it does not seem, if you look back on like the union quashing and organizing, travails or whatever that you've seen with Musk companies in the past, it makes you think that maybe that, I don't know, that was just very easily pushed aside when they were getting these people going. But it's unfortunate because, as you mentioned, his other companies like his Tesla's Fremont plant has way more OSHA violations, per capita than other major U.S. Auto plants. They've accrued a ton of fines. The Reno plant has had amputations occur, lots of injuries. So, I think you could easily make the case that there may be a lax culture when it comes to safety framework in these plants. And I don't think it helps when you go out of your way to be opaque and doing things like dismantling your communications department. So, of course, nobody comments on any of this. So, I don't know. Not impressed.
I think it comes from the top down. When we've seen Musk at Twitter just the last couple of weeks where he talks about committing to hardcore or leave, first of all, employees want to believe in that leadership. Also, it empowers the managers who stay to kind of run their teams with that same mentality.
Yeah, I totally agree.
And that's where these sort of problems come into play. Acquiring an OSHA 10 or 30 Department of Labor card provides proves to employers that the employee has completed 10 or 30 hours of OSHA authorized training on critical workplace safety topics. So, especially when they're working in these particular conditions, maybe that training would have gone a long way. The same complaint also alleges that workers didn't receive double time for working on a holiday weekend. I'm just saying, if you're going to push people to the limit, at least pay them.
Yeah.
All right, our next most popular story. Investigation blames factory blast on errors and, quote, alarm fatigue. On June 8th, 2022, an explosion rocked the Freeport liquefied natural gas processing plant in Texas. The blast was so intense, the fireball was 450 feet high. No one was injured, but U.S. regulators launched an investigation into what happened that day. The Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration issued a report produced by a consultant that's been described by Reuters as, quote, heavily redacted. Still, the report identifies the major causes behind the incident, citing, quote, deficiencies in valve testing procedures, failure to adjust alarms that could warn operators of rising temperatures during operations, and operating procedures that allowed, quote, operator discretion to close valves that might cause liquefied natural gas to be isolated in pipes. The report also says alarms were, quote, constantly indicating, some for years, and on equipment that was out of service. This led to what is known as alarm fatigue, which is when workers essentially tune out these alerts. Freeport LNG says it has adopted procedural changes and hopes to have the plant back online at partial capacity sometime this month. Anna, your thoughts at what happened at Freeport?
Well, there's a lot going on here. And initially when this occurred, they had envisioned that the plant would be down for a couple of weeks. And that was over the summer. And it's still not operational. They need to get approval of what they plan to do to make sure that they're aligning with everything approval-wise and that they've mitigated some of these issues. And they say that they have, but still, they have missed their deadline of getting back up and going multiple times at this point. So I don't know what's going on there exactly. The biggest issue for me when I read this was this thing about the alarm fatigue. That was crazy. It made me think of, so we used to have this issue in our office building where the fire alarm would just go off errantly on a frequent basis. And obviously, like when it was happening heavily, do you remember like people just stopped going outside?
I still don't go outside.
Yeah.
I mean, noise canceling headphones have come a long way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you get the point easily. I mean, your perceived threat in those scenarios is a direct response to the alarms that have gone off so many times for no reason. You understand it to be an error and you just kind of carry on. So alarm fatigue was first coined in medical settings where machines in hospitals with their constant like blinking indicators and alerts had become almost white noise for medical professionals, and it had become difficult for them to register an actual threat because they had become so desensitized to this noise. And I looked into it a little bit more to see just how frequently this was also happening in manufacturing. And it seems like it is a real problem, especially in critical industries like nuclear plants or this LNG processing facility, for example, where the consequences of misreading or not responding can be pretty catastrophic. In this case, it's very lucky that no one was hurt. Nobody died. It was a very isolated incident that had occurred, this fireball, and then it was just over. Yeah. But still, I mean, I think it's pretty inexcusable when you think about they're transporting a potentially explosive material, and yet they had all this retired equipment in the facility that was continuing to alert for years. That's really hard to rationalize. I mean, there are many best practices surrounding basic decommissioning of equipment that's, reached the end of its useful life. What do you do? It sounds like that was deprioritized. And it's not just about the alarms. Like, inoperable equipment can be dangerous in many ways. It can leak fluids. It can leak gases. It can be contaminated. So in this case, there was clearly power running to it. So obviously they dropped the ball, so much as it relates to just that equipment. And then it sounds like they dropped the ball in also many other areas.
When fully operational, this plant processes about 2 billion cubic feet per day of natural gas and exports up to 15 metric tons of liquid natural gas per year. Jeff, this is the second largest liquefied natural gas plant in the United States. Do you think it'll be back to full capacity by March 2023? Seems aggressive.
Hard to say. I mean, it was apparently just this one-time huge fireball, but it was still a huge fireball.
Huge fireball.
Yeah. One fireball, you guys.
Yeah. Obviously put it out. And here's the thing. Usually when we talk about a lot of these safety stories, you're concerned about things internally. Now, when we talk about chemicals and other things that can be harmful to the environment, it obviously also has an impact on the community surrounding it. In this instance, them not paying attention to these safety concerns had a global impact. When you look at the product that they're putting out, natural gas, domestically, during this period of time, prices for natural gas increased by more than 40%. Okay? Oh. This is how people are heating their homes. Okay? Not exactly something we need in the midst of inflation and all the other concerns that we have from a supply chain and energy perspective. When you look at what was going on internationally, you talked about how much they export. Mm-hmm. Export prices nearly doubled during this time. And a lot of this is going to Europe. Last I checked, Europe has some pretty significant energy concerns right now. Mm-hmm. Everything that's going on in Ukraine and again, just globally. So when you're looking at these safety issues, it's one thing it almost becomes palatable, at least to understand, okay, internally they were just dealing with it. They had this alarm fatigue and all of that. But when you look at the ramifications beyond your day-to-day, beyond what was going on within that plant and the safety concerns that you should have anyway for your workers, now you look at how that affected things globally and the impact that it had because you weren't doing the right things and just paying attention to the equipment that you made significant investments in to begin with. It's really a head shaker on a lot of levels.
Yeah, a lot of it comes down to training, and a lot of it comes down to quality training, and also reinforcing that these machines need to be tended to, even if they're not paying attention to them. This alarm fatigue, it was something that I had never heard of before. Mm-hmm. It kind of surprised me, kind of shocked me, but it made sense to me because even down to an alarm clock that you just don't hear anymore every morning because you just tune it out.
But fix the alarms. Again, I mean, this is expensive equipment that you're relying on here. And then you've got all of these specifications, all the OSHA standards you need to hit. Man, make sure the thing works. I don't know. It's a hard one to really wrap your head around.
I think it's hard to wrap your head around, but when you're in that day to day, it's easy to understand how you kind of tune out things that aren't mission critical or haven't been mission critical day to day. And so you understand how it happens.
Because of the culture, right? Yeah. It would be critical, but the right emphasis wasn't being placed.
Our most popular story this week was a bit of a surprise. Haribo gifts man candy after he finds company's $4 million lost check. While walking home, a German man found an odd-looking piece of paper on the ground. It was a check, a 4.6 million euro check for candy company Haribo from a retailer. The man contacted the candy company, which told him to destroy it. For his trouble, he received a thank you gift box from the candy maker with 6 bags of goodies. The man says he thought the gift was a bit cheap. According to Business Insider, Haribo says they sent him their standard thank you package. Anna, I do not understand this man's gripes. He received free candy for picking up someone's litter.
Yeah, I know. And I got to be honest, this is sort of like lifting the lid on the pot to show you what's in the soup. But like when I saw this story and I was like, should I write it? I don't know. It's kind of dumb. But then I did, and everybody was really interested in this one. So thank you, everyone, for reading. I was surprised. Yeah, the only thing missing from the story is like when Slugworth meets him in the tunnel and tries to tell him that he will make him a very rich man indeed. When we, I think as Americans especially, love these stories where people get caught doing the right thing and then they're like rewarded for their honesty. But to be honest, like there wasn't much on the line here.
No.
So the check was crossed, which means that it couldn't have been cashed or even deposited by anyone besides Haribo. And in this day and age, I think there's so many safeguards to protect businesses in these types of scenarios that it would have been nearly impossible for him to do the wrong thing, I guess. I tend to agree with some of the commenters on our website that this person's expectations for what he deserved in exchange for just contacting the company when he found the check, like how much time and effort was he really out here? He could have destroyed the check without even contacting them. He could have left it in the street and the result would have been, I think, the same. Haribo would not have lost any money. So what they did in sending him candy, in my opinion, was an adequate token. And it made us all want gummy bears. So I think it was actually good in the end for Haribo. They probably gained some positive goodwill. Maybe, I don't know. Even if some people agreed that he looked cheap, we're talking about gummy bears still. So
Yeah.
Jeff, we're not exactly talking about a shining act of heroism here.
Well, David, first of all, when you go on your late night binges, from Amazon and you buy mass quantities of candy, are the Haribo gummy bears on that list? Or
Yeah, but I order them and send them to other people. The biggest I could get was a 10-pound bag of gummy bears that I sent to my nieces, just unmarked.
Didn't you order like a huge individual gummy bear one time?
I did once. You're kind of, in the event that the one person I sent those to is listening, you're kind of smoking me out right now.
Oh,
because
no.
it's been
Sorry.
a long No.
Sorry.
It's all right. It's sorry. I just find joy in randomly sending people. You can buy a lot of objects as large gummies, and you can send them to people, and they are very confused. The weirdest one is you can send it was 3 to 5 foot long earthworm, and man, that thing when it's wrapped up. And it's so heavy. Yes. Sorry. Short answer. Yes, I like doing that, Jeff.
Wasn't sure if this was one of the favorites on the Amazon list.
Oh yeah, no. My recommendations from Amazon now are just really squirrely.
it's a weird combination of stuff.
Yeah.
It was interesting. I got a chance to actually look at the check.
Oh, okay.
It was on Bill's website. Okay. And looking at it, I couldn't make heads or tails in terms of what information is on there, but if there was something like a routing number on there, or even just drawing a line between this retailer and Haribo, I mean, that is the type of information that a hacker could grab onto and try to develop a scheme around. Just making phone calls, doing some phishing type schemes. Like this is how that can start. Just having this little bit of data.
Fair enough.
So I think there was value in this guy picking this up, letting him know what happened, and then telling him to get rid of it. But to echo what you guys are saying, I mean, what do you expect, man? You did the right thing. What is your expectation here? There wasn't any monetary loss. There was the potential data breach or security concern revolving this check or this piece of paper. But again, you did the right thing.
Yeah.
Isn't that enough? I don't know. Am
I would
being
want a tour of
altruistic
the
here?
factory.
It was an insufficient attaboy.
I don't know. I would think this guy would feel more like an ass just because he made a big deal about only getting a box of candy for doing the right thing. I mean,
that was the other. I mean, talk about. Another person that struggles with saying the right words and then getting called out for it. This guy said there was a large sum on it. There was such a large sum on it that I couldn't even pronounce it. My initial reaction was like, you couldn't work out the commas, or you don't understand the 1, 2, 3 kick sort of system. But he did, send the photo proof of the destroyed check to the company. So he did do something else. Yeah. See, I'm looking at the check. You bring up the check, and that's pretty easy to understand exactly how much that's worth.
Yeah, I mean, you can see the bank that they were working. So there's something.
You raise a good point about the phishing schemes and stuff like that. We recently just burned an entire bag of garbage in the backyard because we had cleansed some financial documents enough that it like fried our shredder. And
your favorite tool.
It
How
is.
much stuff are you shredding, Enron?
Well, so basically, my wife cleansed anything that was older than 7 years, and I mean it was a lot. It was grocery bags full of this stuff. But Jeff, it provided an opportunity to buy a larger, much more industrial paper shredder.
Nice.
It did remind me about my interest in just finding lost things because you never know what you find when you pick stuff up. I know that it drives friends and family crazy when I do it, but I mean, you just sometimes you find some interesting stuff out there.
Yeah,
and I mean, sometimes it's a check to a gummy conglomerate.
Sometimes it is.
Yeah. All right. Well, before we get rolling with, in case you missed it, the stories that weren't as popular on the website but still stand a big impact on the industry going forward, we have another word from our sponsor, Dassault Systems, and a new webinar coming up December 8th.
Hi, I'm David Manti, and I want you to register now for a new video podcast on how manufacturers are using augmented reality. Joining me is Mike Bradford, and he's going to talk about how, if anything, augmented reality makes manufacturers seem more tech-savvy. How's that working, Mike?
The image of manufacturing quite often, particularly in younger employees, is just, it's not cool, it's dirty, it's whatever. With the use of HoloLens or other technologies to do augmented reality, all of a sudden this is new technology. It's fun to use, it's exciting, it's interesting, and it gives manufacturers a much more tech-savvy and interesting image, particularly for younger workers.
And we're back. Before we get rolling with In Case You Missed It, just remember to join us for this new webinar with Dassault Systems, or video podcast, where we're going to be talking about augmented reality, specifically as it's being used in quality and assembly, and how manufacturers right now are using it to improve their business. They're also using it to attract new young talent, which kind of blew my mind. That's December 8th at 1 p.m. Central. Hope to see you there for the live event, just because those Q&A sessions can get interesting depending on how fired up people get. Well, let's start, in case you missed it, with you this week. Jeff, what do you got?
So I picked a story. The headline is Jack Daniels takes dog toy case to the Supreme Court.
Yes, I'm so glad you picked the story.
Mm-hmm. And I picked this for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's kind of ridiculous, but also I think there is some interesting takeaways here. So basically what this comes down to, the Tennessee whiskey company, Jack Daniels, has asked the Supreme Court to hear its case against the manufacturer of a plastic Bad Spaniels toy. Now, the toy, and first of all, hats off to the AP writer. They had some fun with this.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I'm quoting the article here. The toy that has Jack Daniels so doggone mad mimics the square shape of its whiskey bottle, as well as its black and white label and amber-colored liquor, while adding what it calls poop humor. While the original bottle has the words Old No. 7 brand and Tennessee Sour Mash Whiskey, the parody claims the old No. 2 on your Tennessee carpet. And instead of the original's note that it is 40% alcohol by volume, the parody says it's 43% poo by volume and 100% smelly. The toy sells for somewhere between $13 and $20. Now, what's interesting is, first of all, it seems like Jack Daniels is getting some free publicity here. I can appreciate the fact that they think this is parodying their brand and they're very proud of it, and there's a legacy to it, and they've made this investment in everything that's going on here. But it's not like there's going to be confusion between the two products. It's not another whiskey brand. It's not a consumable product here. If anything, they're getting a lot of free brand recognition from dog owners. Yeah. I think it was kind of funny. I kind of side with the dog toy manufacturer here. But again, Jack Daniels is taking this all the way to the Supreme Court. And one of the reasons is they're getting a lot of support from other CPG companies, other consumer packaged goods companies, Campbell's Soup being one, Levi Strauss Jeans being another. They're saying they agree with it because they've seen similar parodies of their brands and their products and dog toys and other stuff. This is what kind of bogs the court system down in a lot of cases. I think the Supreme Court has more important issues to deal with right now than something like this. I understand there's a bigger topic in terms of copyright infringements and intellectual property and brand parity, I guess. I don't know. But it seems like Jack Daniels would have been better served by basic. And I know they told him, hey, can you knock this off? But to put the amount of resources that are putting in to take a case to the Supreme Court, this just seems kind of foolish. And if anything, this dog toy maker is getting more positive press out of this than anything else.
Keep selling them.
Yeah. So I don't know. There is that dynamic in terms of legal versus right, I guess.
Yeah.
But it just seems like one of those lawsuits that it doesn't feel like it can be worth Jack Daniels' time. I don't know.
It's a parody dog toy. Calm down, Jack Daniels. Although after seeing the dog toy in my local supermarket, I did stop drinking Jack Daniels whiskey because I believed it did taste like poop now.
Really?
Yeah. No, it was, I saw it and I'm like, what happened to the old number 7? I don't want the old number 2. Have enough of that problems.
When is the last time you had Jack Daniels?
I did not think that was going to be the question.
Aren't you glad it was, though?
I was, yeah. No, Jack Daniels and I severed ways back in college after a Applejack problem.
Incident?
Yeah, an Applejack related incident.
Producer Eric forces me to drink Jack and Cokes every time we play volleyball. He's kind of a bully about it. Not going to lie.
Well, I mean, producer Eric is just smiling ear to ear. So it seems like, it's a good problem to have.
I guess.
Anna, your thoughts on the nefarious efforts of this toy maker?
Yeah, my concern is, I think, if parodies become a crime, then what happens then to Weird Al? Does he have to stand before the Supreme Court? I hope not. I don't know. I agree with Jeff. This seems like a bit too far. I don't know if it reflects well on Jack Daniels. It sort of seems silly. Alternatively, the poop jokes seem like there's way too many of them, and I don't understand why there's so many.
Yeah.
I mean, dogs, I get the dogs poop. Is that like their key thing? I feel like
It's what they're known for. It's when I saw the revolutionary product poop bags, I was like, all right, we've gone too far as a society.
All right, yeah.
Desmond, who's watching us live, he just says, ew. Right on, Desmond.
Very astute.
I was, Jeff, I was glad you kind of picked this story because I enjoy going down the dog food aisle at the grocery store to see these parody products. Some of them are very creative, and I think they make you think about the other brands. They never,
100%.
They never make me think, oh, I don't want whiskey anymore now because it's a squeak toy.
But they don't want, these brands don't want that messaging to be out of their control. I understand that.
I understand that too, but my goodness, at some point have a sense of humor and calm down.
Never.
Anna.
David Manty, telling people to move on.
I'm moving on real slow. Anna, what's your in case you missed it this week?
All right, so I picked a story, the title of which was Young Adults in China Don't Want Factory Jobs. I thought this was an interesting study. I found this article in Reuters about how China's young adult population is actually shunning the jobs that their parents do. So obviously we know that there's a lot of manufacturing happening in China, but those jobs, they typically don't pay well. They require long hours. Sometimes people live on site there. They're repetitive. They're prone to injury. So it sounds like younger workers are, unfortunately for these businesses, sort of eschewing factory work for less physical roles, or they're trying to go to college, grad school, whatever. And the options to solve that problem for China seem to pose their own threats, like investing in automation or increasing wages, for example, would add cost to the equation, which reduces export-heavy China's cost advantage, right? So they can only continue to be as competitive as they are if they can make those goods as cheaply as they have. So China's Ministry of Education believes that by 2025, there will be a shortage of close to 30 million manufacturing workers in China. That's in 3 years. The U.S. has its own manufacturing workforce shortage. I think Jeff mentioned this figure earlier, but it's 2.1 million unfilled jobs that they expect by 2030. That's according to Deloitte. So it's a much smaller scale problem, though a problem nonetheless, still. I do think that this article speaks to sort of a sleeper competitive advantage that American manufacturing has, which is that simply, by and large, the jobs available here are much more appealing than what you would see in China, where people are living in dorms, they're working 12-hour days. They barely see their families sometimes.
They're getting beaten because of COVID protocols they don't like.
Right. I mean, it's just the manufacturing jobs there are a completely different story. And you can see why people don't want to do those jobs anymore. Yeah. That being said, I think that China's loss will be the gain of other countries as well. I mean, you are seeing the cost advantage of places like Vietnam, for example, kind of come into focus more and more. But I do think there's also an opportunity for American manufacturing as well. There's really some momentum right now around reshoring and kind of decoupling supply chains from so-called riskier regions. This is as big a risk as any, I think.
Yeah.
And while it takes some convincing here as well to get younger workers to consider manufacturing jobs, I'd argue that this is a problem that we've already seen and started addressing. Like we've already identified this years ago.
Yeah, we're being proactive on it.
Right, versus China, who has maybe been caught a little bit flat-footed, I think, by this. So, as the article states, there's just not a lot of great potential solutions that don't really compromise that cost advantage. So at least in the U.S., these jobs are objectively better. And the issue is more about making that visible and convincing younger people to kind of give those jobs a try. It's not an issue that China's issue is totally different, and I don't know how it's easily solved.
There's no easily solving 30 million manufacturing workers missing. Jeff,
no.
I thought that stat was a typo because if there's going to be a shortage of 30 million manufacturing workers by 2025, there are going to be very serious problems for the Chinese manufacturing economy.
Yeah, it's going to affect their society on so many levels. Mm-hmm. I mean, and it's so interesting to hear how the mindset has shifted so dramatically because these jobs were such a source of national pride. And this wasn't just about the individual being able to take care of their family like we think about here. This was for country. This is to help everybody be better and for us to grow as a power and all that kind of thing. So to hear that mindset just so dramatically different now is really interesting. 30 million jobs. One of the first things I thought about is, man, Mexico has just got to be very excited about that. Mm-hmm. I mean, we talk about a lot of reshoring stuff here, which would be great, but we're having trouble filling those jobs the way it is. I would think someplace like Mexico, you mentioned Vietnam, there's a lot of other places that are going to be very receptive and still offer some, not quite to the same extent, but some of those cost benefits as well. And if you can get closer to markets, even better. Again, Mexico is so appealing because you don't have to worry about all that ocean traffic and shipping and everything else. So yeah, this could have a huge impact within China and really the global markets.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, nearshoring, the second best thing to reshoring. In case you missed it this week, surgeons grow 3D printed nose on patient's arm. And if you heard that, you understand why I could not pick any other story that we ran this week. A pair of surgery teams in France have done something rather incredible. They rebuilt a patient's nose from a synthetic graft they implanted on the patient's forearm to have cells grow on it. The patient was treated in 2013 for nasal cavity cancer. As a result of the treatment, the patient lost a large part of their nose, as well as the front part of their palate. For more than 4 years, the patient lived without a nose. Nasal reconstruction didn't work, and the patient had problems with the facial prosthetic. The medical teams collaborated with the company Serum, which is a Belgian medical device manufacturer that specializes in bone reconstruction. The biomaterial used to reconstruct the patient's nose was 3D printed using 3D views taken of the patient's nose before the anti-cancer treatment started. The biomaterial was initially implanted in the patient's forearm, and in September 2022, after 2 months, the medical device appeared complete and was successfully transplanted from the patient's arm to their face. The patient was in the hospital for only 10 days. They were on antibiotics for only 3 weeks, but they're doing very well. This story was an incredible realization of what 3D printing technology can do in the medical industry. This entire story blew my mind because everything from what we've been talking about for years is becoming a reality, from using the 3D scans, 3D medical scans, to turning those into schematics that can be 3D printed to completely recreate the person's nose with a 3D printed device that is then seeded with cells that then grow into a skin. Blew my mind. Jeff, your thoughts on growing a piece of your body on your arm?
Incredible. I heard you guys talking about this before it posted, talking about the images.
Oh,
and then
yeah.
when I saw him, that's what blew me away. Because
Yeah.
we talk about this kind of stuff a lot. We talk about 3D printing organs and all these other things, and we come not immune, but it's just sort of another thing that we're talking about until you visualize, and you can get a visual like this and see the impact for a cancer patient who really had to feel like,
Deformed.
the impact. I mean, it's hard to miss, right? When your nose is damaged to that extent, and to be able to get that back and live more of a quote unquote normal life or closer to it than what you had before is amazing. And this is, again, 3D printing, which is still crazy. When we first got into manufacturing, 3D printing was strictly a prototyping tool.
Oh, yeah.
It was just, hey, look at these cool things we can do with these printers, and it builds stuff up. Where can this go? And now we're seeing where it's going. I mean, it's incredible. And this was a great story.
All because, I can't remember his name, but the founder of Stratasys, I believe, built a frog using a glue gun. Because that's how he learned about building layer to layer. He was using a glue gun and just started laying layers down and built a frog. And he's like, oh, I think we got something here. Yeah. So he started 3D printing. And I think that, Jeff mentioned the photo. Have you had a chance to look at the photo? Because it is just a nose growing on an arm.
I know, it's amazing. And the fact that this timeline was so short from when they surgically put on the nose and then this person was out of the hospital and is doing well, like how quickly that process was. I think it really reinforces, kind of to Jeff's point about like where this started, but like it reinforces 3D printing as not just another way in so many of these applications, but in many cases, a better way, which is pretty exciting to see this take shape.
No, people that have cranial injuries, they can scan their head and create a complete replica of the damaged part of their skull and replace it. Some of the stuff that's been happening is just incredible. And as we've covered stories like this, as well as stories about trying to implant pig hearts and other animal parts into people, this is just, I did not think the realization of 3D printing in the medical field was going to happen as quickly within our lifetime, and it really is, and it's exciting. All right. Before we get out of here, let's talk about our final thoughts. Anna, what do you got for us?
All right. I know that we were talking earlier in the day about what everyone's reading right now, and I thought you guys might appreciate this, but I'm reading a book that I've been really enjoying, but about halfway through, this just occurred last night, I realized that I think that there is some time travel. In the book, I think maybe a character in the book is maybe a time traveler, but it's not quite been confirmed yet. But I'm enjoying the book so much that I'm going to stick with it.
That's surprising.
So I know. I normally have a zero tolerance policy for time travel, but in this case, I'm going to see it through, and I'll let you know. Maybe it will change some things for me.
What if the main character also has a flying car from the future?
I don't know, Jeff. I'm baby steps, please. Can you just let me?
I'll let you have it.
Doing my best.
Like I picture you coming to this realization and at that page tearing it out and throwing the book away.
I was like sitting on
this is where I stopped.
Yeah, I was sitting on the couch now. My husband Chris was sitting next to me and I'm like, oh my God. He's like, what? And so then I'm like, I think this book might be about time travel. And he just laughed forever. And then he's like, what are you going to do? I guess read it. I guess I'm going to finish it.
My final thought this week is just tomorrow is Thanksgiving. First of all, I want to say I'm thankful for everybody here. Really appreciate doing the podcast with you guys and the producers, despite being blamed for technical problems that are out of all of our control. Over it. Also, it's Thanksgiving. You're with friends and family. Just be good to each other. That table at Thanksgiving can get a little gnarly sometimes in terms of political viewpoints and whatnot, and it's okay to just stand up and walk away. Thinking of you, Uncle Glenn. But no, happy Thanksgiving to all of you and everybody that's watching and listening to us. Thanks for being here. Jeff, what are your final thoughts this week?
Well, you mentioned things to be thankful for, and I am thankful that I can make a dream a reality right now.
What?
Right.
Yes. Because I think it was a couple months ago, we were doing a story, and I believe it was about a facility that was knocked down by a tornado or a huge storm, or maybe it was something else. And Anna's solution was, I think she was talking about like a weather vane.
Oh,
Yeah.
And her thought was to what, Anna? What should they have done?
To put a rooster on.
Put a rooster
It
on
was
it.
a lightning strike. Yeah.
So thanks to the folks at Clarity, which is a cybersecurity company that we ran into down at Rockwell Automation Fair.
Okay.
They were doing T-shirts. I think it was like a Top Gun. I haven't seen the new Top Gun movie, but I think that was the theme of the stuff they were doing. Okay. They ran out of T-shirts. So I took one of our Mighty Fine IEN T-shirts.
Okay.
And guess what I did?
You put a rooster on
I
it.
put a rooster on it.
Who's that?
So this was a company at that they were, again, you can take a closer look at it. That is for Anna.
I mean, yeah, I'll let Anna. That's legit.
So they were putting these decals on these shirts, and there was a bunch of them that were, like I said, I think it's something to do with the new Top Gun movie.
Oh, okay.
I'm not sure, but one of them was a rooster, and Eric was there with me, Bill was there, and they're like, there is no way we can leave here without this. So we have to get a shirt. They were out of shirts.
Okay.
So they just gave us the decal. And my wife took care of that.
You
last
ironed
Put a
it on?
rooster on it.
We put a rooster on
Oh
it.
man, that's amazing. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks,
also-
Payron.
It's a really badass rooster.
It's a
It's
flaming
an
rooster.
awesome
Yeah.
rooster.
He is on fire.
Right? That rooster is part phoenix.
He's part dinner now.
Right? Just like, actually, this is right before the rooster's demise. That is really cool.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah,
That's amazing.
It turned out really well.
Yeah.
Like, I haven't seen those iron-on decals in quite a while. So,
No.
yeah.
I would never thought that was iron-on. Like, I remember old school iron-ons where you had it for the day and then it started to peel off. Man.
There you go.
It's going to be such a weird conversation when I wear this, and people are like, "What is on the front? What is on the back?"
Yeah.
Seems like a
Absolutely.
non sequitur.
Yeah.
Something else to be thankful for.
Thanks, Jeff.
We also had a polling question
All right.
that a lot of people had some awesome insight to. So I want to go through some of these remarks. The polling question is, what is the best route moving forward with materials for EV batteries? So I'll start with something from Mark here. Mark, I'm going to paraphrase because he gave us a great example here, or a great number of comments. But he said, basically, we can't continue to mine, even though closing mines and reducing the amount of metals mined will result in some employment with these miners. Definitely true when you're looking at stuff like copper. A lot of these other mines, though, we've only got one or we're trying to build them up. Anyway, no one, in his opinion, is thinking about also the disposal of these lithium batteries that we're developing. Eventually, these batteries will no longer be able to hold a charge, need to be disposed of. So what are we going to do with them? Can they be recycled safely? He thinks that we should look for alternative fuel sources, reinvest in the research of hydrogen fuel cells. You know, as the first thought is the possibility of hydrogen and something going wrong and the instability, but I think there can be safe ways of usage of this fuel source, and we should investigate it further. So that was his thought process. Close down the mines, do more with hydrogen.
They've been doing a lot with lithium battery recycling.
Yeah.
It's, at least they're working on it.
Yeah, exactly. I agree. I love Jeff Abrams' comments here. He says the problem is a political one. I agree 100%. The industry was forced to proceed with EVs before they were fully prepared. Now, to meet the requirements, we need to reopen mines that were closed for environmental reasons. We need to continue to develop better batteries because long-term, it's a good thing. Ultimately, I think the transportation issue will be answered with hydrogen, though. So short-term, batteries, long-term, hydrogen. Another good comment here is from Tom. He says there's a lot of not in my backyard when it comes to this, but we have to look at it both ways. Also explore modern nuclear plants to replace aging facilities instead of just abandoning them. So a lot of good feedback here. Last one from Paul Hunt. He says, if we're going to get serious with going to EV platform, why not pursue all available or feasible options in order to succeed? And when you look at the majority of results, that's basically where they came in. The majority of people said they want to advance other energy options like hydrogen and sodium batteries as opposed to developing materials in a lab or opening up more mines. A lot of comments. And again, people are saying we need to do all this stuff.
Yeah.
We need to keep all of our options open. Hard to argue with that perspective.
Yeah.
So the polling question we're going to put out this time, again, is circling back to our first story. If you were going to target some of these tech employees that are recently unemployed, which company do you think would be the most interesting to target?
Oh.
Okay. So which of the following tech companies' former employees would you be most interested in targeting for open positions at your facility? So we got Meta or Facebook, Amazon, Microsoft, Cisco. Cisco is actually one that had a lot of layoffs, which was surprising to see. Lyft was another one. Or if you want to say none, just give me a tech school grad. So be interesting to see what the feedback is there.
Yeah, no, I'm really interested to see that as well. Just because I can see benefits with, and it's all probably just stereotypical things, but I could see benefits with each company in particular.
Especially when you're talking about all the data science that's needed right now, especially in the industrial sector.
You should add Twitter. There's a growing pool of them.
it was so hard to type that out. I don't know. I've got I don't know. Everything going on there, just bad taste in my mouth. But
Okay. Can't add the Twitter.
you can write it in.
No, it's all good. It's all
Write it
good.
in.
It's all good. I mean, no, not mine. They might be sought after. I'm not sure. I don't want to misspeak there. Just no one wants. All right. Well, before we get out of here, please make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast. You could also help us out a lot by leaving the podcast a positive review on whatever platform you use. If you want to email the podcast, you can reach any of us at Jeff, David, or Anna at IN.com with email the podcast in the subject line. You can also subscribe to our daily and weekly newsletters and make sure that you get the podcast delivered to your inbox first. For Jeff Ranke and Anna Wells, I'm David Manti. This is the Today in Manufacturing podcast. See you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Today in Manufacturing podcast.